Hello there everybody, welcome back to another episode of Hashtag Anime Taught Me. My name is Jenna O'Malley. I am your soul writer, author of sci-fi fantasy with dashes of romance and nerdy references. Before I get much further into those raw stories that my characters weave throughout time and space, let's go ahead and take a moment and pause. What is Hashtag Anime Taught Me? Several of us creators and writers here on YouTube are getting together and talking about the 5 things that anime taught us about writing blank thing or things, because some of us are making multiple videos. This is my second video on topic. If you want to go ahead and check the playlist and all of the forums and other links, they are in the description box below. Today's topic, I'm covering the 5 things that Hashtag Anime taught me about writing fantasy. Let's get started. Hello there everybody, welcome back again. My name is Jenna O'Malley. I am indeed your soul writer, author of sci-fi, fantasy, what we're talking about today, and those dashes of romance with nerdy references. Alongside the raw stories my characters weave throughout time and space, I help other soul bards, creative people, sunwalker-y nerds such as yourselves enjoy writing, reading, and more in multiple ways. And one of the ways I do it is by collaborating with fellow creators to give you epic content such as this. Today we are indeed talking about Hashtag Anime Taught Me and the 5 things it did on the topic of fantasy. So number 1, when you think you have enough cheese, epic chaos, add more, okay? Yes, I'm making a pizza analogy here. Follow along. Whenever I make pizza, or as a cheese connoisseur, whenever I use cheese in general, I tend to say when I think I have enough for the sake of shrinkage, it not quite being enough once it's all melted, add just a sprinkle more just to account for moisture loss and things like that. With writing, when you think you have pushed your reader's suspension of disbelief, because they have to acknowledge that whether they realize or not when they read fiction to begin with. Can you push it a step further than you already have? Depending on what number book in the series this is for you, you might not have another choice. Some people are writing 20, 30, 40 book long series, okay? And not realizing it. You eventually have to go to a point either on a standalone or a series level and say, how far is too far and can I take it up just a little bit more, okay? Some tools that could help you with this would be the D20 or tabletop gaming alignment chart. Go ahead and use that kind of alignment with good, neutral, evil, lawful, chaotic, morality, gray, continuum based as you can if you need a visual, because some people do need that criteria visual, and that's totally okay. Number 2, tropes are not all bad, nor are they all good. And once in a while, it's okay to kind of take one trope with a couple other tropes, throw them in a blender, click dice on the blender, or in case of us tabletop RPG gamers turned writers, roll dice if you need to, and then go ahead and just see what new combinations come out in the wash. Sometimes you can layer aspects of one fantasy realm on top of another is my hint here. Notice I said I'm a tabletop RPGer turned writer, okay? Tabletop RPGs are basically math-driven storytelling sessions in group format. The only reason why I know how to call it that thing is because that's what I wrote on a proposal as an educator for our school to approve a D&D club. And it worked. Because that's literally what you're doing. You're using statistical chance and basic mathematical skills, maybe even a little basic algebra if you're going, okay, I need X result. What's my Y if I need a certain roll to be blank or higher? That kind of basic algebra might be in play for you if you're trying to make the decision of, do I use this spell versus this spell, or this weapon versus that weapon, right? So backing up a little bit and recapping this to tropes, you can make those same decisions. Do I use this trope versus that trope? Do I swap the genders on it? Do I swap the socioeconomic expectation of the character behind that trope on it in some way? What do I make different? Because sadly, there's only a handful or so of different story plots that are rather umbrella termy in general. That whole thing of, you could basically lump most stories, humans and helped by AI or not, you could lump most of those stories into a couple of buckets or umbrellas. It's not much more than a handful or two, maybe. And that's across cultures and time. So we're going to start to get repeats, whether we like it or not. There rarely is something that is literature breaking in that way anymore, unless it is truly like culture breaking or reestablishing boundaries to global levels and stuff like that. I'm looking at you, Harry Potter, a little bit, because it did, for a whole subculture of spiritualists, make them feel like they at least had a safe place to nerd out, trope-wise. I only say that because I went to college post Harry Potter. Anyway, so tropes are not all bad. And in some types of fantasy storytelling, you need them. Anime uses tropes all the time. Oh boy. Sailor Moon made a lot of the magical girl tropes. Let's get real. Some later, not necessarily Japanese anime magical girl shows went on to look at what Sailor Moon did and say, okay, how can I pivot from here? In my opinion, the Wonder Woman movie did that to a degree. Captain Marvel, literally putting aside the acknowledgement that the actress who plays Captain Marvel in the current rendition of the MCU is a huge Sailor Moon fan, and I am totally for her playing some sort of rendition of Usagi, or she's probably too old to actually play Usagi outside of a voice, so Queen Serenity probably would be appropriate. Anyway, she had this magical girl quality to her where it was okay to be the super strong, girly girl. Because there for a while, it felt like in anime, to be the strong girl was to be more like Luisa from Encanto, Disney's Encanto. You had to be tomboyish. I'm saying this as a tomboy. You had to be tomboyish to a degree to be considered the strong chick in anime. Tenchi Muyo, Ryoko, she's a little more tomboyish than some of the other girls in the cast. She does dress pretty when she wants to dress pretty, but she has zero issue getting down and dirty, more so than any of the other princesses. Now, we have a generation of magical girl-loving adults who are seeing non-Japanese anime comic book characters that are female being given that it's okay to want to feel pretty and still kick butt. Thank you, Sailor Moon and Cardcaptor Sakura. And all the other anime, Magic Knight Ray Earth did this to a definite degree for sure as well. Because they paved the way for It's okay to pick and choose, I want to feel girly now versus not later, and the trope does not go away that you embody. I can be the glasses wearing anime loving nerd that I am, regardless of if I'm in a ball gown or in a t-shirt, and that's okay. Number 3, limit the number of overpowered characters you have to a few, unless you know you're making fun of yourself. Yes, I'm slightly looking at you, Dragon Ball Z. I'm slightly looking at Dragon Ball Z when I say this, and give kind of a balance or a challenge to all sides. Protagonists, antagonists, anti-heroes included, okay? Dragon Ball Z is known for being the anime that takes everybody's power levels and oomphs them. I personally would label Dragon Ball Z as urban fantasy because you have some paranormal aspects and you have some otherworldly aspects. That, you know, that's just me. I personally would say it has that urban fantasy tie-in to it, very hardcore so. And it is known for being bombastic. It is known for taking that number 1 and saying, let's not just add more cheese on the top, let's add more of every single topping you have in the restaurant, and I will even go next door and see what they have to add just for kicks. The meme of power levels being above 9,000 exists for a reason, y'all. That's all I'm saying. Now, if you know that is the aim of your fantasy, and if you know you have a character that is making that for a purpose their way, let them go for it. They should have a foil, is what traditional literature would call it. Somebody who is blatantly an oppositional opposition or an oppositional complement. Either they have a good guy who is basically literally the good version of, or they have a good guy who is, you know, instead of being across the top of the character alignment chart from one another, they're diagonal on the character alignment chart. Which way did you go here? Okay. How far left is this character's mirror image? Give a balance. And again, don't forget the anti-heroes, because anime never forgets the anti-heroes in this regard. I'm going to re-mention Yu-Gi-Oh here. They have some of the strongest anti-heroes in every sub-season of that, and I only watched the original one that started it all. But one thing I keep hearing across the sub-fandoms is the anti-heroes are given their due again and again and again and again. And I think that they often get looked over right here. Often, your protagonist is overpowered with an antagonist complement. Why can't you have an anti-hero that is an oppositional complement to your bad guy or your good guy instead? That really can take the dynamics of what we talked about in our previous episode on relationships and shake up character responses in dialogue, in physicality, in choices to be completely different than had you not considered that angle. We're talking about anime, so number 4 is extremely important above all else, okay? I maybe should have even made this number 5 and almost did. Number 4, plot armor applies to a limited number, nay, if possible, 1 character only, okay? And pick wisely. And keep in mind that people in their circle aren't always in the productive and protective bubble, but they can experience related buffers that lets them serve their purpose. In anime, I'm going to cite... I gotta go back to Sailor Moon again. In the anime original version, when Kunzai dies, unalives himself, takes a hit for the character that in the English we know her to be named Molly. Oh. Right here in the feels. The end of Endless Waltz. The very last moments of Endless Waltz, when all the fans who love Hiro and Relina being together go wild because he collapses into her arms. That relationship has plot armor. He has plot armor, and she slightly had the plot armor so they could have these moments together, right? Ouran High School Host Club. Who do you think has plot armor there? In my opinion, it's Haruhi's dad. And it's just so he can remain to make everyone laugh when needed. Or for the same reason, it's Renge. It's the comedic characters who are bombastically comedic. It's not anyone in the host club that are actual members. They all have consequences that hurt in different ways. Can't avoid them. I'm going to get in so much trouble for bringing this one up. Does anybody in a Ghibli movie have plot armor? Really, truly, let's get honest. Does anybody in those movies have plot armor? Even if it's a happy movie? Now you see where some of my anime themes really come from. Because I watched a lot of Ghibli growing up, to the point that I can quote the original forgotten dub of Nausicaa. Eek. Anywho, keep in mind that protective, productive bubble has a cooldown period, to use a tabletop RPG standard. Like Severus Snape, like Sirius Black, when the clock runs out, what's best to develop the characters who need to be developed most here? Sorry to bring that up. Number 5, keep in mind that the interplay between how manga, graphic novels, video games, and anime borrow from each other is not just to build marketing and merchandise, it is to build worlds, okay? In many a given popular anime, whether it be Sword Art Online, whether it be the Gundam franchise, whether it be Sailor Moon, whether it be Dragon Ball Z, whether it be any number of fantastical anime that got a text-based Japanese RPG in the 90s and early aughts. And some people just went, oh my God, that's like a 500 plus long game list. That's why I included it. It included a lot of anime too. My point remains here. Keep in mind, from a serialized, season-based, growing, sprawling world of fiction, this is not only acceptable of a choice to stumble into, like I did by accident, or on purpose. A lot of readers love that. I mean, it's not just anime that has it, to be fair. I mean, I cited the MCU earlier, for crying out loud. Disney is now having fan fiction of its own fan fiction. It's called the stuff that goes on Disney Plus, guys. And oh my God, I love Loki. I love my kitty Loki, but I love the show Loki. Let's get real. The ripple effects of the TVA. Oh my gosh. But you get what I mean. You get what I mean. There can be an interplay with your serial works here, whether you intended it or not. I mean, if you have multiple pen names, there is zero issue with one of your secondary characters from one world cameo appearing in another world. Why not? Why reinvent the wheel and create another character to live in your head who is basically Another character playing cosplay on your behalf for your sake and sanity. Maybe your readers would rather prefer to see their favorite character get more screen time. Lord knows, plenty of us have secondary characters who we wish got more screen time. I mean, come on. Some of the anime and some of the things I cited earlier, characters I cited earlier, if they had either been A, in the show longer, or B, switched from a tertiary or secondary character to the main character, you would have a completely different story. Not just a completely different perspective. Okay? Keep in mind, some of the most famous anime out there, the writer, the creator, the mangaka who maybe originally drew it as a manga instead of wrote it as an anime script, their thoughts and intentions could have gone completely different just by changing one character out for saying one line of dialogue. This interplay goes down not to the book level, not to the chapter level, not to the scene level, not to the paragraph level. It's a word-to-word effect if you go for the usage of people's names and place names being reused. And people love Easter eggs. If Ready Player One and the meta interconnected series I mentioned earlier, Sailor Moon, Gundam Wing, Yu-Gi-Oh!, Dragon Ball Z, if all of those could get away with it and make the overarching meta worlds that they are, if you're presented with that opportunity and you feel you have the time, talent, skill, and ability, which I can't speak for the time, but all the others I think you honestly do possess, why not consider it? Because these worlds and yours are worth looking at. How can I make this enjoyable for me to live and thrive and breathe in as a writer? But you want to invite your readers to come along for that ride too. As Stephen King acknowledges, it starts in our imaginations as writers, but it ends up in the readers. So I think we just took a really nerdy trip. I have a couple of other videos ahead. I think the next one on this is probably going to be about writing sci-fi or possibly about writing romance. A few other friends have already started adding other videos onto the playlist, including Sam Wicker, who focused on psychological health as presented by anime. And oh my gosh, Sam! You took us on a trip. If you want to keep on going, we'll see you in the description box below. Otherwise, as always, take care of yourself. You've always been worth it. Bye, Soul Writer, out.